The anticipation was palpable as we ventured deep into the wilderness. Our backpacks were heavy with supplies, and our hearts were light with excitement. It wasn't just any camping trip, it was the eve of a total solar eclipse. A celestial event rumored to be unlike any other. There were 4 of us. Myself, Alex, Casey, and Jordan. Friends since childhood, we shared an unspoken bond. A connection that had weathered the storms of adolescence and the drift of early adulthood. Our destination was a clearing known only to a few. A hidden gem encased in the embrace of towering pines and whispering streams. As we set up camp, the forest around us seemed to buzz with energy, as if it too was awaiting the spectacle promised by the heavens. As night descended, we huddled around the campfire, the crackling flames casting dancing shadows on our faces. We shared stories, some old, some new, our laughter mingling with the symphony of the nocturnal woods. Yet, beneath the camaraderie, there was a current of unease, an inexplicable tension that none of us dared acknowledge. The morning of the eclipse dawned clear and bright, a perfect canvas for the cosmic ballet. We prepared with a sense of reverence, donning our protective glasses and training our gazes upward. As the moon began its slow dance across the sun, an eerie calm settled over the forest. The temperature dropped, and the daylight faded, plunging our clearing into an otherworldly twilight. It was at the cusp of totality, as the last sliver of sunlight waned, that the air around us seemed to shimmer, the boundary between light and shadow blurring. A profound silence enveloped us, a quiet so deep it roared in our ears. That's when the visions started fleeting at first, like the half-remembered fragments of a dream, but growing in intensity and horror with each passing moment. Casey was the first to react, her scream piercing the unnatural silence. She clawed at her eyes as if trying to tear away the visions that assailed her. We rushed to her side, but even as we did, the world around us twisted, the serene forest morphing into a landscape of nightmares. Each of us was ensnared by our own private terrors. Alex, always the stoic, stood frozen, his face a mask of horror as he stared at something only he could see. Jordan, who had always feared isolation, began to frantically spin around, calling out for us even as we stood right beside him. As for me, I was plunged into a world where every shadow whispered threats, and every breeze carried the scent of decay. The ground beneath my feet seemed to churn and heave, and the trees bent toward me with malevolent intent. Desperation clawed at my throat as I realized that these were not mere hallucinations. Our deepest fears, the ones we kept buried beneath layers of bravado and denial, had been given form and substance. They were as real as the terror that gripped our hearts. The eclipse reached its zenith, the sun a mere ring of fire in the sky, casting an otherworldly glow on the hellish tableau that our clearing had become. It was then that I understood we were not merely witnessing our fears, we were being consumed by them. Summoning every ounce of courage I didn't know I possessed, I reached out to my friends, my voice barely a whisper against the cacophony of our shared nightmare. We have to face them, I urged, more to convince myself than anyone else. Our fears have only the power we give them. One by one, we turned to confront our demons. With each step, the apparitions seemed to waver, as if our resolve alone was enough to make them falter. My own fears, a roiling mass of shadows and whispers, began to recede as I faced them, my heart pounding in defiance. As the eclipse waned, so too did the horrors that had besieged us. The forest returned to its serene state, the nightmare visions dissolving like mist under the rising sun. We stood together, our bond strengthened by the ordeal, our relief palpable in the crisp morning air. Yet, the return to normalcy was not without its scars. The experience had laid bare the vulnerabilities we had so carefully hidden, not just from the world, but from ourselves. We shared our fears, our voices low but steady, finding solace in the shared burden of our vulnerabilities. The eclipse had passed, but its shadow lingered in our hearts. We broke camp in silence, each of us lost in contemplation of the ordeal we had endured. As we trekked back to civilization, the forest around us seemed to watch in silent reverence, as if acknowledging the battle we had fought and won. We returned to our lives, but the memory of that day remained, a stark reminder of the fragility of the human psyche, and the strength that lies in confronting our deepest fears. The eclipse had been a gateway, not to celestial wonder, but to the darkness within ourselves. And in facing that darkness, we found not terror, but the light of understanding and the unbreakable bond of shared adversity.